public transport item, which is back on the Infrastructure, Transport and Environment Committee agenda. And that is on page 456 is the report beginning, and the recommendations on 468. Just to clarify, the recommendation, when it refers to the above recommendations, it's referring to the recommendations made by the staff, not the recommendation coming from the Riccarton Wigram Community Board. So it is a reference back to clause 6, paragraph 6, the staff recommendation. So it's the series of recommendations around the new intersection approvals, the proposals around Riccarton Road, both sides, and then on top of it, subject to the signing of a lease with the owners of 123 to 125 Riccarton Road. So that is the recommendation that's in front of the council, and that's moved it by Phil Clearwater and seconded by Tim Scandrett.
I'd also like to refer to the petition, remind councillors of the petition we received this morning from Generation Zero, that we have had the prayer read to us.
So could we note, so it is recommended that the staff recommend, it's recommended that the the petition be received, and you can come up with the right wording to put in there, and that, the rest, okay. And I think Councillor Jimmy Chen has an amendment that he would like to make.
Amendment, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So if we could have your amendment.
I give that.
Have you given it?
Oh, great.
Yes.
Is there an amendment there for Jimmy Chen? Right, so that's the alternative motion, which is that the community, I think that should be changed to the Riccarton Wigram Community Board recommendations be adopted.
Yes.
And that's got a mover and a seconder. So I think that rather than I think that we should deal with all of the questions that people want, and I think we can traverse both of those, both the amendment and the substantive motion, and we can perhaps get an update from staff to begin with in terms of where things are up to with the with negotiations as far as the obtaining a lease with the owners of 123 to 125 Riccarton Road, subject to wherever, so subject to the decision that we will make today. So,
in regards to a lease with 123 to 125 Riccarton Road and CBD Limited, we have agreed the lease in principle. So that means that we've agreed all the various clauses, and both parties are happy with them. That lease is in the process of being drafted, and then it's just up for review. There's obviously going to be minor changes just on language from a legal perspective. There's conditional upon your approval is one of the key components of it. That's it really.
Yep. And the other thing that I wanted to put right on the table, right at the very start, is that there's been a lot of publicity in the news media around the position of Riccarton Mall and Westfield, and how and obviously it's relevant because of the amendment that's been moved in terms of the Riccarton Wigram Community Board recommendations. And perhaps if you could give us a bit of a flavour for the negotiations with the mall and the outcome of those.
Certainly. So we've been negotiating with Westfield since April of this year. There's been one key issue which we are unable to get across, which is and it was surmised by Westfield themselves in the paper last week, when it was their view that a commercial solution to the loss of land and amenity on prime Riccarton Road frontage is most appropriately resolved with a land swap as part of the compensation package. So that was 3 days ago. Ever since we've started negotiating with them in April of this year, that has always been their position. Our position is that we're simply not legally able to enter into any agreement relating to the Clarence Street land. We have a number of legislative requirements that we need to fulfil before we've been in a position to do that. We've also got our own council policy, which we need to comply with before we're able to do with this. Least of all, currently as it sits, the Clarence Street land has a use as of right now. That will change. Westfield have been advised of that. They were advised of our timelines all the way through. They were unwilling to accept that. We tried a number of things in order to conclude an agreement with Westfield. When we did almost conclude an agreement with Westfield, there were various aspects came in to any agreement which just nobody could agree to in any type of commercial or public sense at all. And as such, we continued and sought very hard to reach agreement, and we simply were not able to, as they were still, as evidenced by their quote in the paper last week, determined to secure some form of agreement relating to the Clarence Street land.
And perhaps you need to really explain for us why it is not possible to do a land swap.
Certainly, at the moment, whilst the community centre is certainly damaged, it is still being decided what is actually going to happen with that community centre. There are 3 options which are being considered. One is to rebuild on the existing site. One is to purchase an alternative building or site somewhere else in Riccarton, and the third option was to lease somewhere else in Riccarton. Until that decision has been made, nothing can happen with that land. It still sits with that community centre usage on it. First of all, if it is determined that we are going to sell some portion of it, it's not yet determined which portion, if any. And even then, we still have to go through our own council disposal process, which circulates the property around all other council business units, and that sees if there's another council use for it. If there isn't another council use for it, we then have to go out and consult with the public pursuant to Section 138 of the Local Government Act, and that relates when we dispose any type of parkland. Whilst this may not fit the meaning of the park, which we would commonly refer to it as, in this section of the legislation, park means land acquired or used principally for community, recreational, environmental, cultural or spiritual purposes, and would need to, as I said, consult with that. Once the results of that consultation have come through, and we cannot predetermine the outcome of that consultation, there may be a resounding no, do not sell the land from the community. If at that stage then we're in a position to be able to dispose of the land, we still have to comply with our legal obligations pursuant to Section 40 of the Public Works Act 1981, which is where we have to offer land acquired via the Public Works Act back to the owners, the prior owners or their successors. We've gone through that work and identified that there is one portion of that land that they need to have the chance to take up any offer back that is in place. Then once we've done that, we would then need to resolve, the council would need to resolve if it is in the best interest of the community to deal unilaterally with Westfield. Our own council property disposal processes say that we should not deal unilaterally with one party.
But there are exceptions to that.
There are exceptions.
And obviously, a land swap would actually be one of those exceptions.
Certainly, that would need a council resolution to do so, but yes, that is certainly an option. Then at that stage then, and only then, would we be able to enter into an agreement that pertained to relating Clarence Street and the bus stop. However, the time frame for what I've just outlined is it's not quick. Westfield were advised of these timeframes. We attempted to work with them through a memorandum of understanding, which meant that we would walk hand in hand through this process without guaranteeing any outcomes, because we cannot guarantee the result of any outcome. That there wasn't acceptable, and each time, as I said, we almost came to an agreement. We weren't. The negotiations were incredibly serious, and we worked all the way through We looked at a number of options in a number of different ways. The basic crux of it is we were just seeking to get a very basic ground lease over 10 car parks for 5 years. That we couldn't reach that conclusion due to the fact that there was a desire from Westfield to secure Clarence Street and they were looking for leverage. Because I think the public perception was that the only reason that we couldn't do the land swap was because it would be just dealing with one party. But actually that's the thing that's the easiest thing for a council to make Certainly.
Uh,
Uh,
um,
um,
uh,
um, um, That's correct. So the last step, is, as you point out, is the easiest step.
Yeah.
And that's resolving to deal unilaterally. The other steps, we don't know what the outcomes will be. We still have to go through those processes at some stage.
Yeah.
But we do not know what the outcome will be.
Okay. And now tell me an example of why you couldn't get a deal on the 5 year. I mean, let's not look at the real intention, but let's look at what were the sort of conditions that they wanted to put on the agreement?
In September, we'd essentially verbally agreed a lease. By the time the lease documentation was presented, previously unmentioned clause, it was clause 30, had been inserted, which was a 6-month termination clause. Westfield for council to acknowledge that Westfield were going to develop the land, and that was 6 months' notice, they could terminate the lease. There was, if council is going to inject that type of capital expenditure into a project, in essence, we had a 6-month lease that was just almost a day-by-day rollover.
Right. Okay. Right, questions? Jimmy, Chen.
Thank you. Except you answer the mayor questions, every time when you have a negotiate with the Westfield, whether council have any written document?
Yes, we have. Yep, okay. There's numerous written documentation. There's been numerous versions of leases have gone to and through between council's own legal side as well as Westfield's legal side. We've been involved with Westfield's New Zealand director. We've been involved with their development executive. From our side, we've involved councillors to see if we can get this across the line. Councillor Clearwater and Councillor Lonsdale. That wasn't successful. We involved the chief executive, who wrote them a letter outlining why we were unable to enter into this agreement, but still saying that there is a desire for that council continues to be interested in concluding the negotiations. Unfortunately, because of the fact that we are unable to enter into the type of binding agreement that Westfield wanted with Clarence Street, these discussions were not successful.
Second question is because based on your information, you only consider street work, but I just want to know whether you also consider structural upgrade and also consider the kind of the detailed cost-effective analysis regarding to this kind of agreement.
Yeah, I'll need to be careful here because these negotiations are certainly commercially sensitive. However, the terms that we have agreed in principle certainly, I do not believe, put council in an onerous or unfair position.
Third question is, but yesterday the lady Justin Mott, she on behalf of Middleton Multiple Resident Association have a recommendation regarding to the kind of frontage of the Westfield Mall. Currently, they have the planter box outside the Westfield Mall. Actually, if we consider remove those planter box, have one more the bus can stop in there, one more space. So whether this recommendation will be considered by the staff as part of the street work.
I think one thing that's worthwhile noting, Councillor Chen, is that the existing bus shelters are currently on Westfield land. So the land that they sit on are Westfield's, and they are there at Westfield's pleasure. There is no legal agreement. There is no agreement, full stop, for those shelters to be on that land. So we are simply there at Westfield's pleasure. There is nothing stopping Westfield requesting council remove those from their land at any given stage.
Yep. Last question.
Last question. I reviewed the staff, the consultation figure. One is overall figure in here. Also, I detail check the attachment, especially in the infrastructure environment committee, the attachment 3. I calculate those the two figures is the difference. Overall, in here consultation, staff, the particular mention, general of full support is 172, opposed 73, comments only 9, total 253. But I calculate each one of them. The general support is 112, but opposed 114. Comments only 12. So it looks like more against the current, staff side. I'm wondering why the figure is the difference.
What we can do is ask consultation leader Philippa Upton to speak to that.
Councillor Chen, I'd have to look at how you came to that conclusion, because the conclusions that we came to were based on the submission feedback spreadsheet that clearly stated yes, no, and did not indicate. So I'm wondering whether comments only would have been from people who provided comments only. If you see what I mean, they didn't actually indicate their preference. I'm not sure. Yeah, I can provide you with this information, because this actually this was very carefully checked, and as far as I understand, that this is clearly stating the preference of all the submitters here, and that's what we used our data. We did make it clear in the actual in this summary here that there were a number of individual submissions from Generation Zero. There may and they were, but also that there were specific comments from some submitters commented only on Division and Kauri Street, and that's why we've put that here. But so I'm sorry, I can't answer your question there, except that it is based on very clear data that we've got here in terms of those who supported and those who did not through these submissions.
That's
and
great.
Those who did not indicate.
That's enough. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
And
great.
I can provide that to you if you'd like to have that.
That would be great. Thank you. Who was next? David.
You've indicated that it may take a couple of years to resolve all the issues around Clarence Street. Can you just outline whether it would be feasible to continue with an operation that we've got now at Westfield and wait the 2 years and negotiate with Westfield for a proper settlement once those issues have been resolved?
Yeah, Councillor Esther, anything in regards to that is possible. However, anything like that carries a certain amount of risk. We may get round 2 years down the track once we've completed our due process and it discovers we're not able to dispose of Clarence Street land. And then we've gone 2 years down the track. There's also the risk that, if we carry on with the status quo, we have no formal occupation right to those existing bus shelters. So by all means, if it was the council's wish, we could certainly seek to continue to do that. However, in 2 years' time, we may still be no further down the track. We may not be able to dispose of Clarence Street, and in the interim, we may have been evicted from our current site.
I think too also from an operational point of view, bear in mind the new network starting on the 8th of December. It could be said that we are leaking some patronage already through inadequate facilities on the existing site and safety concerns.
Yeah, I was going to mention there is the safety aspect as well.
I'll save some other comments for the debate.
Yeah, Phil.
I wonder if staff could outline to us in summary the safety concerns, or I guess particularly the safety advantages too of the current site, because that is quite major for all of us, of course.
Well, I suppose one of the big benefits of the 123, 125 site is it is adjacent, or adjacent to existing crossings, pedestrian crossings, across Riccarton Road, which you can't really say the same for the Westfield site. There is no adjacent crossings, and going there as a casual observer or not, you all see people walking between busy lanes of traffic trying to cross the road from one side to the other. And I think that probably sums it up. With the Division Street intersection with the signals, you have a way of trying to maintain a safer environment for people to cross the road, to catch buses on the other side of the road, or to go to the shops on the other side of the road, and vice versa.
Yep. Yanni?
This is going to sound a really dumb question, but I'm still trying to get a proper answer. Under 5 financial implications, you say that the capital program, including funding for this project as it is part of the cost sharing agreement with government, and it was agreed that the government through Sarah would be responsible for delivering the Central City projects while the council would deliver suburban proposals. I can't see anything where we've ever agreed that we would deliver this. In fact, the cost share is really clear that the Crown would lead the delivery of these and it would pick up the shortfall in funding. So I want to understand why the Crown isn't delivering this project, when agreement was made that we would do it, and what the financial implications, the shortfalls, are being met by the Crown or being met by us.
Well, I'll speak to that. I'll speak to that first. Through Peter Langbein at Council, we've taken advice on the operation of the cost-sharing agreement from the start of the project, and that advice has been that this project does, in fact, fall under the umbrella of the Crown cost-share agreement.
I mean, unfortunately, if somebody had thought about this at the time, and I wasn't here at the time, it would have been sensible to keep it within the realm of the government's Central City Recovery Plan, and perhaps this is just identifying just one of a small problem around having one plan for the CBD and elements that then require a connection with the rest of the city, and CBDs tend to need to be connected to the rest of the city. The government could have used its powers of compulsory acquisition at the time that they established this network, and it would have just solved so many problems that we had. But we haven't got the capacity to use those provisions, and we, as we've just heard, would have to go down an exhaustive and sounds exhausting process in order to get to a compulsory acquisition on Riccarton Road. And it may not be ideal now, from what I've heard about the location of the traffic stops. So the traffic lights might actually be better located where we've ended up. Maybe one of the things that would be great is if Westfield would open up the wall at the back, and then we'd have everything.
So I'm still kind of trying to understand, from the council agreeing to the cost share and a report that said the Crown would do this project, how we've got to we're doing it. It is mentioned in the Accessible Transport Plan, which is a Crown plan, and it says that the improved facilities in Riccarton Ave are required to support the Central City Public Transport Network. So it's in the recovery plan, it's in the cost share, but we're doing it. And
Yeah.
I don't know why in the report we've got, it's saying that we've agreed to do it when I don't think we have.
Well, we have, and it's in the capital program.
I think you're probably asking a question
Yeah,
that could only be asked by people
Yeah.
that
So
were
there's some
involved
higher level
before.
change here?
No, it's not. I mean, the thing is that it's not relevant to this consideration.
Well, okay, the funding's relevant. So what's happening at the funding?
The financial implications are that the funding is that the amount of the proposal is on our budget.
David Adamson.
David?
I've got a program governance group meeting next week, so how about I take that issue and I'll raise it at that governance, which is covering the cost share projects outside of the horizontal infrastructure, if that makes sense. So I can raise that as a specific issue. Sorry, I can't give you an answer on that, but that's probably the best.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Can I just add something else? That the advice we got from Peter Langbine was that the council share of the cost sharing agreement amounts to 33%, $29.8 million of the whole project, which is just over $90.493 million.
Right.
And the way it's structured, I understand, is that for this Rickerton project, the priority and the lounge and this stuff, the council is responsible for 100% of the costs, the budget. The budget.
And what it means is...
Come out of the 29 million.
That's correct.
Yes, it comes out of the
about
total.
29 million that
That's
we're
right.
It's essentially, we're drawing down from our own contribution.
Right. So there is no way that this is an additional cost to what we agreed in the cost sharing agreement.
That's correct.
Right.
That's reassuring. Thank you.
Very good. Right. So ready to put the amendment first, and then the other one. But we might as well debate the whole lot as one, and then I'll put the amendment, and then I'll put the motion. So yes. So who would like to contribute to the debate on this? Councillor Chen. Well,